The sun hanging over the Via Sacra is not merely a celestial body. It is a blinding, unblinking eye of judgment. It hammers down onto the ancient cobblestones with a physical weight reflecting off the polished marble of temples that scream the glory of Rome to the heavens. In the center of this searing stage, surrounded by the deafening roar of a city that believes it owns the world, stands a woman who was once the master of the East. Zenobia, Queen of Palmyra, the warrior monarch who dared to carve an empire out of Roman flesh, is now reduced to a spectacle. She is draped in robes of Tyrian purple, a dye extracted from thousands of crushed sea snails, so expensive it is worth more than its weight in gold. Once this fabric signified her divine right to rule her challenge to the Caesars. Today, the purple is not a symbol of power. It is a costume in a tragedy written by her enemies. Around her neck, loops of heavy gold chains drag her head downward, forcing her into a posture of submission she would never have chosen. On her wrists, manacles encrusted with gems bite into her skin, chafing raw the flesh that once held the reins of a warhorse. The jewelry is so heavy, so grotesquely opulent, that she cannot even walk under its burden without assistance. Two Roman guards, their faces masked in practiced indifference, flank her. They hold her up by her arms, not out of kindness, not out of chivalry, but because the script of this play demands she does not collapse until the audience has had their fill. She must be seen standing even if she cannot stand alone. She has been walking for 3 hours. The procession is a river of conquered misery stretching miles ahead and miles behind a living inventory of Rome's plunder. There are lions from the Atlas Mountains pacing in cages too small for their rage, their golden eyes dull with confusion. There are giraffes creatures
You're hurting me!
the Roman mob has never seen looking bewildered at their doom. There are replicas of Palmyra, her city painted on wooden floats, depicting flames consuming the libraries and temples. She built artistic renderings of her own apocalypse. And then there is her.
Get up!
The climax of the
orders!
show. The crowd roars a sound like
leave
the
me alone.
ocean
Help
breaking
me.
against a cliff face. Thousands of voices screaming obscenities, cheering for Aurelian, the emperor who restored the world by breaking hers. They throw flowers, they throw rot. She hears the Latin jeers, a language she speaks fluently, a language she used to negotiate treaties, but one she now refuses to acknowledge. Her eyes are fixed on a point in the middle distance, somewhere between the dust of the road and the smoke of the sacrificial altars. She does not cry. She does not beg. She simply endures. But look closer.
Step
Look
right up,
past
see
the
great
spectacle,
cat
past
of
the gold,
southern
past the
deserts.
noise. Why is she still alive? Rome
My
kills its
God,
enemies.
It is massive.
That is the rule. That is the rhythm of the empire. Vercingetorix, the Gallic chieftain who united the tribes, was strangled in a dark, damp cell after his parade. Jugurtha, the Numidian king, was thrown into a pit to starve and go mad in his own filth. Why is Zenobia, the woman who took Egypt, the breadbasket of the empire, away from Rome, who minted coins with her face eclipsing the emperor's walking in the sun, why are they weighing her down with jewels instead of iron? This moment, frozen in the amber of history, is not what you think it is. It is not mercy. It is not simple humiliation. It is a psychological experiment conducted on a continental scale. Rome is not just punishing a queen, it is rewriting the definition of power. And to do that, they didn't need to kill her.
To victory!
They needed to do something much, much worse. To understand the horror of this moment, to truly grasp why the gold chains are heavier than iron, we have to rewind the clock. We have to go back to the sand and the silence before the chains. 2 years earlier, in the year 272 Common Era, Zenobia was not a captive. She was a titan. While
Hail
Rome was
to the
eating itself
Emperor.
alive in the crisis of the
Long
3rd century,
live
with
the
emperors
Emperor.
rising and falling like tides and legions turning their swords on each other, Zenobia saw an opening. She didn't just govern Palmyra, a wealthy oasis city, she expanded it into a superpower. Her armies, disciplined
Remember
and
your
fierce, swept into
heritage, my
Egypt,
son.
seizing the grain supply that fed the mouths of
Rule
Rome.
with strength
She
and
marched
wisdom.
into Anatolia. She declared her son Augustus and herself Augusta. She wasn't just a rebel, she was a rival. She was creating a counter-empire in the desert, a beacon of culture, commerce, and military might that threatened to make Rome irrelevant in the east. But empires strike back. Emperor Aurelian, a soldier emperor, forged in the brutal wars of the Danube, a man who earned the title Restorer of the World, turned his legions east. He didn't just want to defeat her, he wanted to annihilate the idea of her. The war was brutal. Palmyrene heavy cavalry, the cataphracts men and horses encased in steel scales, clashed with Roman legions in the scorching heat of the Syrian desert. Cities fell. Alliances crumbled under the weight of Roman gold and Roman steel. And finally, Zenobia fled. She rode a camel toward the Euphrates, racing against the setting sun, hoping for sanctuary with the Persians. But Roman cavalry was faster. They caught her at the riverbank just moments away from freedom. And in that moment, as the shackles clicked shut, she ceased to be a queen and became property. This is where the history books usually skip forward. They jump from the capture to the triumph, glossing over the 2 years in between, as if they were merely a waiting period. But those 2 years are where the real story lies. What happened in the 730 days between her capture on the banks of the Euphrates and her walk through the streets of Rome? Why the delay? Why keep a dangerous symbol of rebellion alive for so long? When a sword stroke would have been so easy, the answer lies in the dark science of Roman domination. They didn't just throw her in a dungeon to rot. They put her through a process of deconstruction. Imagine a cell not damp and dark like a common hole, but sterile and controlled. Rome didn't want her dead, they wanted her diminished. They needed her to look like a queen, but feel like a slave. The Historia Augusta, a collection of biographies, mentions she was debilitated by her captivity. This wasn't accidental. It was engineered. They applied a regimen of controlled starvation. It is an art form for the jailer. You don't starve them to death, you starve them to weakness. Roman military doctors, experts in the physiology of survival, knew exactly how many calories a human body needed to function without thriving. They likely fed her a diet calculated to strip away muscle mass, the muscle she built riding horses and commanding armies, while keeping her skin clear and her appearance intact. The warrior queen who could ride for days and command armies was slowly, methodically reduced to a woman who trembled when she stood. Then there was the sleep deprivation. Not the chaotic noise of a torture chamber, but a systematic disruption of rhythm. Guards changing shifts loudly every 2 hours, lights being brought in and out at irregular intervals. Meals served at random times, sometimes at dawn, sometimes at midnight. This destroys the circadian rhythm, the body's internal clock. It leaves the mind foggy compliant, unable to hold on to a train of thought or formulate a plan of escape. It breaks the will faster than a whip. And then the isolation. Zenobia was a woman of the court, a philosopher queen who surrounded herself with intellectuals like Longinus. She thrived on debate, on conversation, on the exchange of ideas. Her mind was as sharp as her sword. Rome took that away. They locked her in silence. Days turned into weeks where no one spoke to her. No one answered her questions. She was fed through a slot. She was watched through a hole. She existed in a vacuum. And then suddenly, interrogations. Endless questions about her treasury, her allies, her plans. Not because they needed the answers, they already had her treasury. Her allies had surrendered, but to force her to speak, to remind her that her voice now belonged to them. They wanted to see if she still had fire. If she did, they doused it with cold indifference. But the cruelest part of the preparation was the observation. A Cassius Dio, writing about other captives from the Dacian Wars, gives us a chilling clue about how Rome treated high-value prisoners. They were often taken to the Colosseum. They were given seats of honor guarded by praetorians separated from the mob but forced to be part of it. And they were forced to watch. They watched criminals being torn apart by wild beasts, their screams lost in the laughter of the crowd. They watched gladiators slaughter each other for the mob's amusement, spilling blood on the sand to satisfy the Roman lust for death. They watched reenactments of their own defeats played out by prisoners of war who were executed at the climax of the show. Zenobia sat there in her Roman box, surrounded by the smell of blood and sweat, and watched what happened to those Rome did not value. She saw the gore, heard the screams, smelled the iron tang of death. The message was crystal clear, delivered without a word being spoken. This is what we do to trash. This is what happens to those who are of no use to us. You are alive because we allow it. You are breathing because we have a use for you. Do not mistake your survival for mercy. It is merely a different kind of sentence. She saw her own soldiers' men. She had led dying in the arena, and she could do nothing but watch. It was a lesson in helplessness taught in the most brutal classroom on earth. By the time the day of the triumph arrived in the year 274 Common Era, Zenobia had been fundamentally altered. She knew exactly what she was. She was no longer a monarch. She was a prop, a living artifact. The golden chains were not just jewelry. They were functional restraints disguised as luxury. The weight was calculated with engineering precision. If they had put her in iron shackles, she would have looked like a common criminal. The crowd might have felt pity for a fallen woman, but by draping her in gold and jewels, by dressing her in the full regalia of an Eastern queen, they achieved something much more potent. They created a contrast that screamed failure. Look at this woman, the spectacle said.
Look at me when I speak
Look at
to
her
you,
wealth.
Queen.
Look at her titles.
Your defiance
And look at
changes
how
nothing.
heavy they are. Look at how she cannot even stand under the weight of
Look
her
at
own
me
ambition.
when I speak to you.
She stumbled.
Your
She
silence
faltered.
will not save
Her
them.
knees weakened by months of confinement and
Look at me when I
malnutrition
speak to
buckled
you,
under
Queen
the
of
gold.
nothing.
And every time she did, a Roman soldier was there to
Where are
catch
your
her,
armies now?
not to help her, but to highlight her helplessness. She tries to walk like a queen, the crowd whispered, but she needs a Roman hand to hold her up. It was a masterclass in propaganda. Aurelian wasn't just showing off a captive, he was showing the Roman people that foreign power was inherently weak, inherently unstable, and that only Rome offered true strength. He was turning her into
We
a
are
living
ready
metaphor
for the
for the
spectacle.
East rich, beautiful, exotic, and utterly dependent on Roman support to keep from falling into the dirt. And Zenobia knew it. She was intelligent enough to understand every layer of the game being played with her body. Every step was a fresh humiliation. Every cheer for Aurelian was a nail in the coffin of her legacy. But she kept walking. She kept her head high even as her neck screamed under the weight of the massive gold collar. Why? Because she had seen the alternative in the arena. She knew that to collapse, to weep, to beg would be to give them the final victory. Her dignity was the only weapon she had left, a small, sharp shard of glass she held in her mind against the crushing weight of the empire. She walked to survive. She walked because she had daughters who were watching or who would hear of this day. She walked because the only thing worse than being a trophy was being a corpse that no one remembered. But here is where the story takes the turn that haunts historians. The procession ends at the temple of Jupiter Optimus Maximus, the heart of Roman religion. The sacrifices are made. The bulls are slaughtered, their blood splashing onto the altar. And usually, this is when the captive king is led away to the Tullianum prison to be strangled in the dark. It is the period at the end of the sentence. The crowd waits for the announcement of her death. But Zenobia does not go to the prison. Aurelian, in a move that shocked his contemporaries and baffled his enemies, grants her clemency. He gives her a villa in Tiber near the famous Hadrian's Villa. He integrates her into Roman society. He gives her a life. Why let the Queen of the East live? Why risk her becoming a rallying point for future rebellions? Why keep a woman who had once declared herself equal to Rome-breathing Roman air? The answer is terrifying in its pragmatism. Rome didn't need a martyr.
Queen of thieves
Martyrs
is humbled.
are dangerous. Dead queens become legends.
Your chains
Their flaws
become you.
are forgotten. Their defeats are romanticized. A dead Zenobia would be a ghost haunting the eastern provinces, whispering resist from
She
the
thinks
grave.
she's better than us wearing
Songs
that
would be
velvet.
sung
Her
about
father
her
was a
courage.
traitor
Rebellions
to the
would be
Earl.
launched in
Aye,
her
and I
name.
heard the plague took
But
her
a
brother
living
last
Zenobia,
week. Did you hear what
a
she did down by the
Zenobia who
river?
grows
They
old
say
in
it
a
was with
Roman
a
villa,
stable
a
boy.
Zenobia who learns to like Italian
She should be
wine and speaks
banished for
Latin to
such
her
filth.
servants that is harmless. That is pathetic. Rome ruled through client kings and queens. They needed the people of the East to believe that submission brought rewards. By sparing Zenobia, Aurelian sent a message to every other ruler on the periphery of the empire: surrender, and you can live a comfortable life. Resist to the end, and you will be crushed. But submit, and there is a place for you at our table. It was a calculated political move, a way to pacify the East without stationing 20 legions there.
No,
But
please,
for
let me
Zenobia,
go.
it was a special kind of hell.
Scum.
Think about what her life became. She spent
I
the
am
next 30
innocent.
years waking
Please,
up in a
mercy.
house that
No,
wasn't
wait.
hers in a land that wasn't hers.
Dog.
She
No,
watched her
please,
daughters
I am
marry
innocent.
Roman
Let me
senators,
go.
men who represented
it,
the very
scum.
system that had destroyed their mother's empire. She watched them give birth to
With this
children
ring
who were
I
Roman
thee
citizens'
wed,
children,
and pledge
who
my
perhaps
life to
didn't
yours.
even speak
And where you are
Palmyrene,
master,
who worshipped Roman
I am
gods,
mistress.
who knew
Iure
Palmyra
optimo
only as a
matrimonio
conquered
iuncti
city in a
sunt.
history book.
Feliciter.
She watched her bloodline, the bloodline of warrior queens, dissolve into the unremarkable gene pool of the Roman aristocracy. She watched her own history be rewritten. Roman historians called her noble and virtuous, not because she was a great leader, but because she became a good Roman subject. They stripped her of her teeth and then praised her smile. They turned her from a lioness into a lapdog. Imagine the dinner parties.
Who is a good dog now?
Zenobia, the woman who conquered Egypt, sitting at a
Pass me
table
the wine.
with the wives
this
of
vintage is
senators,
superb.
making polite conversation
By
about the
Bacchus,
weather
I
or the
haven't
price
laughed
of
that
olive
hard
oil.
in ages.
Guests whispering behind their hands, that's her. That's the woman who fought Aurelian. She became a tourist attraction in her own life. A living
He
museum
truly
exhibit.
said that to the Optimist.
The
He
queen
did,
in the
and
garden.
then the lion escaped.
Useful
I
only
swear
as
I
proof
thought I
that
would
resistance
perish right
ends
there.
in decoration.
They say
This
she
survival
styles
was the
herself
ultimate
Augusta.
punishment. It was the erasure of her
Assyrian
identity
usurper
while she
in
was still
purple
around to
silk.
witness it.
Look
Execution
at her,
ends the
accepting
story.
tribute as if
It
she were
provides a
Augusta
definitive
herself.
conclusion.
It is only a matter
Survival
of time
drags it
before
out
the
into a
emperor
long,
hears of this
fading whimper.
insolence.
Rome
Did you see
understood
the
that
way
the
she wears
cruelest thing
that
you can do to a
diadem,
queen
like a
isn't to kill
goddess?
her.
And the silks
It is to make her
stolen
irrelevant.
from the emperor.
To make her watch as the world
Did you
forgets
see the way she looked
why
at the
she was
senator?
ever feared.
Utterly shameless.
To make her
They say
realize
she
that her
claims
great
divine
rebellion was just a
ancestry now.
footnote
Who
in the
does the
history of
Palmyrene
Rome.
think she is?
Now
She hasn't
contrast
moved an
this
inch
with
all
Boudica.
morning.
2 centuries earlier in the year 60
A
Common
living
Era, the Iceni
monument.
queen Boudica led a rebellion that nearly drove Rome out of Britain. It was a different time, a different kind of war. Rome had tried to
Look at her
humiliate
now.
her first.
Pathetic
When her husband
creature.
died,
Is
Rome
that the
seized
best
her
your
lands.
gods can offer?
When she protested,
We are
they
the true
stripped her
rulers
naked
here.
and flogged her in front of her people. They raped her daughters. They showed her that for a woman who defied Rome, there was no honor, only violation.
Crying won't
They tried to
save you,
break her
little
spirit
dove.
through shame. But they miscalculated.
She belongs
Instead
to
of
us
breaking,
now.
Boudica
Stop
burned.
whining.
She led a
Look at her
rebellion
now,
that was a
praying
firestorm of
to her
rage.
gods. They
She burned
cannot help
London to
you
the
here,
ground.
woman.
She
is
slaughtered
pathetic.
70,000 Romans and their allies. She didn't want to conquer Rome. She wanted to hurt it. But when she was finally defeated at the Battle of Watling Street, facing a Roman army that had outmaneuvered her, she did not wait for capture. She did not wait for the chains or the villa or the triumph. She drank poison. She chose death. Why? Because she had seen what Rome did to queens. She knew that if she was captured alive, she would be made into a spectacle far worse than death. She knew they would drag her through Rome, use her body to prove their dominance, and perhaps let her live as a broken pet. She chose to control her own ending. She denied Rome the triumph. She denied them the living trophy. And look at the result. Boudica is remembered as a force of nature and avatar of vengeance. Her name is synonymous with freedom. Statues of her stand in London today. Zenobia is remembered as a romantic figure, a tragedy, a curiosity. Boudica died a queen. Zenobia died a Roman matron. Rome feared Boudica's ghost so much that they stopped putting women in power in Britain for centuries. The archaeological record shows a sudden shift warrior burials for women cease. Rome systematically dismantled the matriarchal structures of the Celtic tribes to ensure no other Boudica could ever rise. But with Zenobia, they absorbed her so completely that she disappeared. She became part of the Roman tapestry, a thread woven in and lost. The villa in Tiber is a ruin now. You can visit it, but there are no signs telling you about the sleepless nights Zenobia must have spent there. There is no plaque describing how she must have stared at the painted ceilings, wondering if she should have fought to the death on the banks of the Euphrates, wondering if the poison would have been sweeter than the wine. History remembers the executions because they are loud and bloody. It forgets the survivals because they are quiet and sad. But we must remember. We must remember that power isn't just about who dies. It is about who decides how you live. Rome perfected the art of breaking people without breaking their bones. They understood that if you can make a queen look like a servant, you don't need to kill her. You have already won. They understood that the most effective prison is not one made of stone, but one made of irrelevance. Have we stopped doing this look around? We still measure powerful women by how they break. We watch them fall and ask, did she cry? Did she beg? Did she maintain her composure? We demand that they perform their downfall for us.
Now.
We have upgraded the technology of humiliation from golden chains to paparazzi lenses and social media shaming, but the impulse remains the same. We still want to see power humbled. We still want to see the mighty brought low and made to live in the wreckage of their ambition. History asks, what happened to captured queens? The better question is, what did Rome need captured queens to become? In order for the empire to function, Rome needed them to be visible failures. It needed them to be living proof that resistance was futile. And have we stopped needing that? Do we still need to see our heroes broken to feel safe in our own mediocrity? A 6th century Syrian chronicler preserves what might be a quote from Zenobia. It might be an invention, a line written by a man centuries later who imagined her pain. Impossible to verify, but it sounds right. It sounds like the truth she couldn't speak in the villa. In my time, I was one of the most powerful women in the East. Now, I am an ornament in a Roman garden, useful only as proof that resistance ends in decoration. You have
Little
just
one,
witnessed a truth history
please
tried
don't
to
cry.
bury, not by destroying evidence,
It
but
will
by
be
calling
all
it
right.
mercy. If this story of the queen who walked in chains and lived to be forgotten haunts you, then you are paying attention. Don't let her stay buried in the garden. Zenobia died sometime after 274. We don't know when. We don't know where. We don't know if anyone held her hand or if she died alone. And that silence, is the point. That silence is the true execution.